I am so glad that you are here today. I am excited for what God has for us. Last week, we talked about being a bringer. We talked about the life of Andrew, the disciple, and how everything that Andrew did was bringing people to Jesus. Right? We saw that from the very beginning when Jesus called him to be his disciple. One of the first things that he did was he went and found his brother Peter and said, hey, I met this guy named Jesus. He's the Messiah. You need to come and meet him. And we see the little boy when Jesus fed the 5,000 plus the women and children, 20,000 people. It was a little boy who brought 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. But it was Andrew who said, hey, this little boy's got something. Let me go take him to Jesus, and maybe Jesus can do something with that. And then later on in the Gospel of John, we see Andrew. There was a group of Greek people. And they're like, hey, we want to meet this guy named Jesus. And so he said, all right, let me go introduce you. So Andrew's entire life was about bringing people to their Savior, bringing people to the Messiah, and how we need to model that in our lives as well. And that's why if you weren't here last week and you look in the back corner, you see that big black board with the Jesus Changes Everything and a whole bunch of notes stuck to it. We are now 9 weeks away from our Christmas service. And so every name that's on there is people that do not have a relationship with Jesus. And so we committed last week as a church that we are going to be praying for people on that board that this Christmas, between now and then, they will accept your invitation to come to church to hear about Jesus. And so if you weren't here last week and you didn't have an opportunity to write any names down, there's underneath your seats, or maybe not under your seat, but at a seat next to you, there's still some cards. Write a couple of names down. You put one on the board and you take one home, and then all of us are committing to praying for those names. And so for you guys that are here today, as we're leaving today and as you're coming in next week and every single week from now on, every time you think about that wall, every time that you pray for your names, every time you come to church, that's what we're going to be doing, because I believe that God is going to answer our prayers and we are going to see people come to know Jesus this Christmas. But as I was doing that, putting together that sermon last week, there was one sentence in that whole story that I just kept on fixating as I was putting it together. And I kept thinking about over and over again, is when Andrew's following Jesus, and Jesus turns to him and says, what do you want? He's asked, and that seems like a kind of a rude question, right? Like, what do you want? Why are you following me? And to be fair, Andrew did kind of give a weird answer, like, hey, Jesus, where are you sleeping at? It's weird, right? But the point of Jesus asking that question is he wanted to make sure that Andrew was following Jesus for Jesus, not Jesus for what Jesus could do for him. And Jesus wanted to decide if, Andrew, are you a true disciple or are you a consumer? And sadly, for a lot of people in the church world today, we have more consumers than we do disciples. We can serve Jesus for the benefits, or we can serve him because he's Jesus. And that's what Jesus is trying to get to the bottom with Andrew, is like, hey, are you following me because of who I am, or are you following me because of what I can do for you? Because there's the thing, we don't follow Jesus to stay out of hell. That's not the reason why we follow Jesus. Is that a benefit? Yes, absolutely it is. It's like a big perk. Right? But that's not the reason that we follow Jesus. We follow because we want a deeper relationship with him. We want to know him on a deeper level. So the question of what do you want, it sets the tone for the next several years for Andrew. Because they were following Jesus, not what Jesus could do for them. And when you look at the disciples, we see that they were committed to Jesus and to the Great Commission. They didn't follow Jesus for the blessings and the glory. Because their lives, I don't know if you know this or not, but the 12 disciples, 11 disciples, not counting Judas, and 11 of them, every one of them with the exception of John, their lives ended in martyrdom, right? And John was exiled. So their lives were not glorious and they were following Jesus because Jesus was Jesus, not what Jesus could do for them. Their rewards for following Jesus were being hung on a cross and speared and beaten and exiled and stoned. They didn't follow Jesus because of what Jesus could do for them personally or financially. They did it because of who Jesus was. And sadly, I can make the argument that there are most Christians, or a lot of Christians, over 50%, let's put it that way, a majority of Christians follow Jesus for the blessings, for the healings, the miracles, the fear of going to hell, instead of committing their life to becoming more like Jesus. We get just enough religion on Sunday morning to make us feel better about ourselves, right? Well, I went to church and I heard, the pastor say something. I was sort of listening, like we sang some songs and like if I get just enough of that, that will last me through the week and that will satisfy my fears of maybe I'm a Christian, or I'm not a Christian, or am I going to go to hell? And I get just enough of that. That makes me feel better about myself, but not enough of Him, not enough of Jesus to truly change my life. And if Jesus were here this morning, if He walked right up to you and He sat down, and you're sitting here and He sits down next to you and says, hey, what do you want? Like in life, just in general. What do you want from me? What would your answer be? Think about that for a second. If Jesus were here, and listen, first of all, Jesus is here. I just want to Jesus doesn't even show up to that church. Jesus is here. I'm talking about if Jesus physically walks in and sat down next to you and says, what do you want? What would your answer be? Because if we're truthful, for a lot of us, our answer would be, Jesus, I need to tell you about all the stuff that's going on. I need this fixed. I need that fixed. I need a promotion at work. I need a raise at work. And those things like those, I'm not saying that those things are always bad, because Jesus hears us when we're, we don't admit this, but when we're quietly to ourselves praying, all right, God, just let Mahomes come through in the clutch one more time. Just last time, Jesus, I promise I'm not asking. Just one more time and I'll quit asking. Like those are the things that we would probably ask Him for if we were honest with Him. And honestly, truthfully, there is nothing wrong for asking for God to bless your job, to bless your finances, to heal your body or sickness. That's biblical to pray for Jesus to heal your body. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is if that's the only reason why you are following Jesus, then there's a disconnect somewhere. It's the overall attitude of what we think about Jesus. Because the truth is we tend to treat Jesus more like a genie. You guys ever seen the movie Aladdin? Great movie. Right? I grew up with a kid. He can quote, or he could quote in elementary school, he could quote the entire movie line for line. But if you haven't seen the movie, you have this orphan boy that he finds this genie lamp and he rubs the lamp and this big blue genie comes out and gives Aladdin 3 wishes. And so in that movie, in that scenario, Aladdin is in charge of genie. Because the genie has to give Aladdin whatever he asks for. And for a lot of us, that's our relationship with Jesus, right? Jesus, I need something from you. I rubbed the lamp, you appeared, you have to do what I'm asking you to do. Listen, I wished for it, I asked for it, you have to give it to me. And it's like, oh, hey Jesus, what's up? I need a new car. Hey, Jesus, what's up? I need you to fix my situation at work. Jesus, listen, nobody's ever three-peated before. We need one more Super Bowl this year, right? Jesus, I need you to fix my husband. Jesus, I need you to fix my kids. Jesus, I need something at work. And that is our relationship with Jesus. We rub the lamp. We think Jesus appears and He has to answer to us because we rub the lamp. And that is not how this whole relationship works. This is not how our Christian walk works. Jesus does not in the lamp, and we don't rub the lamp and He has to answer whatever we ask Him for. That is not how it works. That's not how it's supposed to be. But the problem is that we live in a consumer-driven world, don't we? We live in a world where if you don't sleep good, try our pillow. It'll make you sleep better. You can't, if your car is terrible, try our car. It's better. If you're sick, that's okay. We've got a medicine for that. Everything is designed to fix a need in our life. Whatever it might be, there's a product for it. There's an app for that. There's a solution for that. And so we live in this consumer-driven world where as the consumer, we are what's right. Everybody caters to us because they're selling a product that they want us to buy. And we like that. We like being catered to. We like walking into a store somewhere, if you're going to buy a vehicle or buy a furniture, and people are like, hey, what do you want? They're like asking us, what do we want? Like, hey, I want that couch, or I'm looking for this. And people cater to us because they're trying to sell us something, and we like that feeling. And we're such a consumer-driven world that we fill up our garages, we fill up our sheds, we fill up our attics. There are people that pay for storage units because their house doesn't hold enough stuff, and so they have to go and pay more money to house more stuff because we are a consumer-driven culture, and that consumerism leaks over into our relationship with Jesus. So we treat Jesus like a consumer product instead of treating Jesus the way that he should be. We expect every desire of ours to be met, and if they are not met, we get upset and we leave. And if we're being truthful, our views of God have been blurred with that same mindset. We think about, have you ever gotten mad at God because your life didn't go the way that you wanted it to? I have. Change of plans, that kind of thing. And so, God, my life is not going the way that it's supposed to. Why did you let this happen? And if that shows us a mindset of what we're trying to think that we're serving Jesus for the benefits, that our life should always be perfect because we're a Christian. And when it doesn't go that way, we get upset. We expect Jesus to be our genie who grants us our wishes to make our lives easier or better. Which is why Jesus asked Andrew the question, what do you want? Are you following me because I'm the Messiah? Or are you following me to get a front row seat to all the miracles, to all the things that I'm going to happen? Do you want to see that firsthand? Or are you following me because you know that I am the Messiah? Jesus knew that the challenges that would come, and he knew that if the mindset of Andrew was a consumer-driven mindset, when things got hard or difficult or challenging, if there was no foundation there, it would all crumble. And sadly, that is what's happening in the church world today. Look over the last however many decades, you see kids and adults who have grown up into the church, and they get to a certain age and they walk away from everything that they've ever known, that they've ever been taught, because there's no foundation, because the church has become consumer-driven. We're going to talk, there's no foundation, there's no deepness there. And so the first time that a person has trouble that goes against everything that they've ever been taught, they don't know how to react, and they walk away because there's no foundation. Consumer-driven Christianity will never lead to long-term happiness. It will never lead to long-term joy. It will never lead to a lifelong of a commitment to Jesus. Because the moment, as a consumer-driven, the moment that phone call comes in, the moment that things don't go as planned, they drop what they always thought because there's no depth to it. They weren't ready. Genie Jesus kept them safe, and they walked away when life got hard. Life isn't always going to go as we planned or hoped it would. We live in a fallen world, and sometimes bad things happen, which is why we need to ask ourselves a difficult question of, what do I want from Jesus? Why am I serving Jesus? Why am I here today? What do I want from him? And if the answer is the same as Andrew's, that I just want to be near you, right? Because that's when Jesus asked the question, what do you want? Andrew's like, hey, I just want to be where you are. Wherever you're at, that's where I'm at. Wherever you go, that's where I want to go. Whatever you do, I want to do it with you because of who you are. And if our answer is anything other than that, I'm telling you right now, when life gets hard, it's going to be a mess in your life because you have no foundation, you have no depth, because we treat Jesus like a genie. We need to grow in our relationship with Jesus. We need to want to follow him with everything that we have. Then we need to make sure that we are doing the right things to ensure that that is happening. We need to put away the consumer mentality to actually grow. And in 2 Timothy chapter 3, we read this passage, verses 1 and 2. And this is Paul talking to Timothy. He says, you should know this, Timothy, that in the last days there will be very difficult times, for people will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, and ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. That seems like that was written yesterday, right? People will only love themselves and their money, boastful, proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, oof, ungrateful, nothing sacred. Like this literally could have been written yesterday. We'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. But this was written 2,000 years ago. Because everywhere that we see, we look around, we see people who only seem to care about themselves. I'm old enough to remember a word that used to be kind of popular in our culture. You know what it was called? Narcissism. You guys remember that word, narcissism? It's a good word. But today, we call it Facebook, Instagram. It's not narcissism when I'm promoting it. I'm just going to post pictures of myself. We live our life with our camera phones turned back, pointing at us instead of pointing out to the world. Look, guys, look at me. Look how great I am. Look at my life. That is how we live our life, with the camera pointing towards us. When Jesus says, hey, I need you to take that camera and I need you to turn it around to face the world. I need you to care more about other people than you do about yourself. But no. I gotta get this picture for the gram. I gotta look cool for my friends. I gotta show off what I have. I need to, to promote myself. I need to let people know how great and wonderful I am, how wonderful my life is. Now that verse, when we read it, it sounds like that's how we would describe the world, right? Here's the thing that hurts about this, even worse. Paul is not talking about the world in that verse, those verses. Paul is talking about the church. He's talking about the church, that in the last days that people are going to become so self-consumed with what I want, they're going to become boastful and proud. They're not going to listen to anybody. Nothing is sacred. Paul is talking about the church. And that is hard to hear. It's hard to think about. It's hard to put that into our context because we like that verse when it points to the world, but we don't like it as much when it points back at us. And here's the truth, and here's the reality. Listen, if you're new here, you're like, I don't know if I like this guy. Just give me a few more minutes, and then you'll probably really not like me, so it's fine. Here's the thing. Don't answer this out loud. I don't want to know the answer, because I already know the answer, but you don't have to answer it out loud, okay? How many of us came to church this morning thinking about something with yourself? I hope the biscuits are the way that I like them. Ooh. I hope the coffee is stronger this week. It was weak last week, and I don't like that. Some of you are like, I hope Pastor did not make the coffee because when he makes it, it's way too strong, and I'm a pansy, and I want it weak, right? Like that's... How many are like, hey, I really hope they have the crunchy donut holes there because I love the crunchy donuts. I really hope they sing my favorite song today. I really hope PJ talks about something that really reaches into my life and speaks to me and applies to me that I can grab hold of and take out so I can have something this week. How many of us had that thought today? Don't raise your hand. I hope it's not as cold in there as it was last week. I hope it's warmer this week. I hope he doesn't preach too long. I got somewhere to be afterwards. Listen, and I'm not condemning you when I say these things. I'm being real when I say each one of us have a me first attitude. We are that selfie, all pointing the camera at us because it's all about what I want, what I feel is best, what I need, not about what everybody else needs. And here's the thing, until we change that mindset of what I want is most important to what everybody else wants, that's what is most important. We will never reach our full potential as followers of Jesus, and we will never reach our full potential as a church. Because here's the thing. I love you, and your mommy, I know to your mommy, you are the most important and special thing in the entire world. But the reality is when you come into this church, you are not the most important thing here. I am glad you're here. I love you. I want you to continue to coming on. But it's not about you. Just like it's not about me. It's not about Pastor Regina. It's not about Beverly. It's not about Pastor Katie. It's not about Uncle Kenny. It's not about any one of us. It's about what we are called to do here, to go out into the world to make an impact on those who do not know Jesus. And if we are at the answer to the question is, what do you want? God, I need you to do this for me and this for me and this for me. We will never reach that potential because it's not about you. It's not about me. It's all about Jesus and what does he want me to do. Too often we come into church and we handle our relationship with Jesus in selfie mode. And the best thing that I can tell you today is that there's a little button on your phone that when you're in that selfie mode, you can click it and it will turn the camera to face out and not at you. And the same thing applies in life, is that we can actually live a life where we are looking forward and looking out into the world instead of looking at ourselves. When Jesus asked, "What do you want?" he is challenging Andrew to not think about himself, to not put himself above others, but to focus on the one who is above everyone else. Because when we focus on Jesus, naturally our focus will be in the right direction. David says in Psalm 27, he says, "I just want to dwell in your house and stare at your beauty." Talking about God. How many of us have that same mindset when it comes to church? I just want to be in your presence and stare at your beauty, God. Or do we have, I really hope that the coffee is better this week, or I really hope that they have new flavors of tea, or whatever it might be. Right? Or I really hope I hope nobody sat in my spot in the sanctuary. I hope nobody parked in my spot in the sanctuary. I hope. No. It's not about you. It's about what Jesus wants us to do. It's about other people. It's about putting ourselves below other people. It's about being a servant. We have lost the ability to not be the center of every picture. We are consumers who treat the Bible, treat the church, treat Jesus as a way to get what we want. And if we will take the challenge of looking at others before ourselves, it will change how we do everything. I remember when I bought my first bow, my first real bow. It was a Hoyt, and that's why it was a real bow, right? Anybody else? Sorry, you're just not a real one. But I walked in, and this guy was notorious for being a jerk. This guy, the shop owner, notorious. And I walked in, and I told him what I wanted. I had cash in my pocket. All of a sudden, I became the most important person in that bow shop, right? I was going to spend more money than anybody else there that night. And so I was getting neck rubs, like he was like rolling out the red carpet for me. "Hey, man, this is it." And listen, we like that, right? We like being the center of attention. We want people to pay attention to us. We want our needs catered to. But that works at the bow shop. That doesn't work in church. We're not, listen. If you're looking for a church that's going to cater to your every single need, there's like 5 other churches in Windsor. Find one of them, because this is not what we're going to do things. We're not going to operate in such a way that we place you, the consumer, as more important than the mission. The mission has to come first. Jesus has to come first. Do you have a place in that? Yes, absolutely. Are you important? Yes, absolutely. You can call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and if you're having problems, and I will answer the phone. Like, we care about you. We love you. We want you to succeed in life, but you are not the most important thing here. And if we treat it like that, if we act like that, then we're always going to come up short of who Jesus wants us to be. And also, I feel like I need to give this disclaimer, because maybe there are some new people here. Like, man, this church has got problems. I know. Listen, I'm not saying that this is a problem for us, but I am warning us about the dangers of consumerism that each one of us, if we are not careful to, can fall into. Okay, so I'm not saying that this is a problem. I'm not addressing a specific thing. I'm just giving a general warning, a general understanding of like, hey, this is how we operate. This is what we're going to be doing. So that way you can never say, well, I thought it was all about me. Then you should have come to church more because I preached on it one time. That's not about you, right? Because that's what we are not going to operate where you are the most important thing here. We're going to operate as the mission is more important. Paul says in Philippians chapter 2, says, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. Think of other people as better than yourselves. Serving God is not about you. Our relationship with Jesus is not about you. It's all about God. It's all about Him. It's about dying to ourselves and putting what God wants us to do first. What He desires of, that is the most important thing. And for years now, the church in general, not this church specifically, the church in general has become more production than substance. It's about making the consumers happy instead of making them holy. Don't talk about money. People get mad if you get in their wallets. You can't talk about money. right? Like, people don't like that, so don't talk about it. Right? Don't talk about sin because people want to feel good about themselves. Right? They don't want to change anything about them. They want to get just enough religion to make the message. You can't talk about sin because that will offend people and people may leave. Don't talk about things that will challenge them to live a holy life because consumers, we want our ears tickled instead. We want a message of like, hey, feel good, you're doing great. Just trust God and believe and everything will be happy. Just rub that genie lamp and Jesus will come and answer all your questions. You'll never have any problems. That's what we want. But that's not a life that leads to success in the long term because the moment your world gets rocked, you have nothing to fall back on. Because it's not about making you happy. It's not about making the consumers happy. In religion, it's about making us holy. And Jesus wants us to live a holy, called apart life. Paul tells Timothy, this is going to be a massive problem in the end time. It's going to get worse, and we have seen that. We see people church shopping until they find a pastor that won't challenge them, that won't call sin, that makes them feel warm and happy and all fuzzy inside. And we stay, and we find that until they make us mad, until they say something that we don't agree with. And then we're looking at the mirror saying, am I wrong? No, that's not how we look in the mirror. We look at the wrong saying like, he has to be wrong. I am never wrong. So obviously this is a him problem. So I need to leave and find somewhere else to go. When Jesus asks us the question, what do you want? Do you know what our answer needs to be to that question? When Jesus says, what do you want, Jonathan? My answer needs to be, God, I need you to kill Jonathan Presley. I need you to kill who he is. Sometimes he gets angry. Sometimes he loses his temper. Sometimes he puts himself above other people. Sometimes he's a little bit selfish. Sometimes he loses control. He gets a little bit upset. He's short with his kids. Sometimes he doesn't want to, not really in that mood to worship you or to praise you. Sometimes he doesn't really want to read his Bible that day. I need you to kill who he is, his sinful human nature, and I need you to remove Jonathan Presley, and in his place, I need more of you to replace that. He needs more of your spirit, more of you. I need you to kill who he wants, his sinful desires, and replace it with you. And if we will pray that prayer, and if we will mean it, God will kill Jonathan Presley at some point. He will kill it, and I can live a called apart life. But the problem is we don't want to pray that prayer because it's going to require change from us. Paul in Galatians chapter 2, verse 20 says, my old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Paul. Are we all in agreement that Paul's probably the best Christian who ever lived? Right? Like none of us, if we try to compare our accomplishments to Paul, our holiness to Paul, Paul's got us waxed. Right? We're all in agreement. Paul says, I have to kill Paul so Jesus can be glorified. I have to kill what Paul wants in order so that I can push Jesus first. Paul knew that he had to crucify Paul so that he could become more like Jesus. And that's what our prayers need to be. God, kill my sinful nature. Kill what I want and replace it with what you want. I need you to kill me so that your spirit can enter in and live through me. So instead of walking around in selfie mode, we are aware of the things that are going on around us. We are aware of other people. We aren't about serving ourselves or making ourselves happy. We're about bringing people to Jesus. We will never be a truly joyous people if we are too busy staring at ourselves. Imagine for a moment what the church in general, as a whole, could accomplish for the kingdom if each member of the church in the entire world had the mindset that Paul tells in the Philippians to think about other people. That we're not going to do anything out of selfish ambition. We're going to do everything for others. We're going to do everything. We're going to live a life that points to Jesus and brings people to Jesus. Imagine what would happen. Jesus in Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 and 25 says this. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. That is a loaded couple of verses right there. Give up your own way. Take up my cross. Follow Jesus. Give up your life for the sake of Jesus. The only way that we can effectively follow Jesus is by giving up what we want for His sake. Give up my preference for the preferences of what Jesus has for us. And that is hard to do. C.S. Lewis said it this way: humans rarely pray for the thing God wants them to pray for. They simply want enough grace to see them through some moment or time of trouble. They conjure up a vision of the future they want and appeal for that outcome. They persist in wrapping their anxious hands around life's steering wheel as if it's going to work this time, if only they clutch it more tightly. The most difficult prayer for us to voice is not my will, but thine be done. Our conversations with God regularly leapfrog over our intellectual resolve not to ask for stuff and land squarely on the bargaining and plating table. The best we seem to be able to do is arrive at a compromise between what we know to be right intellectually and the howl of protest that lies within us. Now, if you're like me, you need to read that a few times before you really get it, right? C.S. Lewis is way smarter than we are. But basically what C.S. Lewis is saying there is we have to change the way that we live life. Instead of clutching on to life's steering wheel and protesting like, this is what I want, this is what I need, we have got to let go of the steering wheel. And we say, God, I know what I want, but I'm going to accept and desire what you want. And that may be different than what I want, but I'm going to trust you enough to believe that you know what's best for me, that you have what is best for me. We are surrounded by a world, and there's a pressure to replace the love of God with something else. To die to oneself, to put others ahead of ourselves is a foreign, strange concept in 2024. Yet, Jesus repeatedly insists that we have to die to ourselves in order to live for Him. The Christian life is essentially an ongoing process of dying to myself and living for Christ. And our sinful human nature runs in opposition to this. We are hardwired to care more for ourselves than what we do for others. We are by nature full of pride, and we tend to think that we know what is best and that we are not really in dire need of a Savior. We believe that we can will it to happen. If I just fight hard enough, if I just try hard enough, I can make it happen because I'm special. I can do it this time. And anytime we chase after something that isn't God, you know what that's called? Idolatry. Right? We tend to think of idolatry as some kind of shrine or a trophy or something like that. No, anything that we put God with, that we chase after instead of God, that is idolatry. And the two main things that keep us from God are the two main reasons we need to die to ourselves, which are pride, ourselves, we care about ourselves, and idolatry, which is our desires. So if those are the two things, the pride and the selfish desires, that is what keeps us from fully living in the life that Christ has for us. And Andrew, he understood this on a fundamental level, that life is not about me. Life is not about what I want. What do you want? Jesus, when you ask me, what do I want more of you. I want to see the world the way that you see the world. I want to see people the way that you see people. And sometimes that may mean that I don't get everything that I want. And Jesus, I'm okay with that because it's not about me. It's about you. Following Jesus is about putting His will over our own. It's about putting Christ above anything and everything else. Worship team, you guys come up. In the Bible, dying to oneself is never presented as optional. It's never portrayed as occasional. Jesus said, take up your cross daily. This isn't something that you do today that will last a lifetime. The process of becoming more like Jesus, less about self, less about consumerism, it's a daily process. And it involves us emptying ourselves before our Heavenly Father because we can't do this on our own. Killing Jonathan is not a job for Jonathan. Killing Jonathan is God's job. I just have to be willing to pray that and mean that and then allow Him to do that. I just need to be willing to let Him do it. If I humble myself and ask Him to do it, then I will allow Him to do it and Jesus will do it. Will you stand with me? So, very simple question this morning is, what do you want? Who is Jesus to you? Is He someone you follow so you can rub that lamp when you need something? Oh, here's that lamp. Yeah, let me get that dust off. I haven't done that in a while. Okay, I need something now. God, I need you to fix my car. Right? I know I haven't talked to you in a while, but listen, it's time for Genie Jesus. I need you to fix my car. God, I need you to fix my brat. Sorry, none of us have brats. I know that. God, I need something from you. What do you want? Do you want Genie Jesus or do you want the real Jesus? Because Genie Jesus is going to let you down eventually because you do not have him in the right priority. You're going to rub that lamp one day. God, I need you to fix everything, all this mess that I've created. I know I lied and cheated and stole, and my spouse is leaving me because I was a terrible husband. I was a terrible wife. I did all these terrible things, God, but I need you to fix it. And God doesn't fix it because you don't really care. You're just in trouble now. He's not going to answer you. And know what you're going to do? I'm done. But if we have real Jesus, the Jesus that we will die to ourselves daily, we will pick up our cross daily to follow him, and we walk around with the phone pointing outwards instead of pointing it back at us, that is where we have depth, and that is where we have a foundation that when life gets hard, and trust me, life is going to get hard. If you haven't experienced any difficulties in your life, then God bless you. I have. I've gone through it. And without that foundation of who Jesus truly is and my relationship with him being more than surface level, that is when we fall apart. So what do you want? Do you want Genie Jesus or do you want the real Jesus that says, I need you to die to yourself every single day and follow me? I need you to consider others more important than yourself. I need you to put away all your selfish desires and focus on me and focus on others. Because if we will agree to do that as a church, our biggest hopes and dreams that we could ever possibly have to make an impact in our area will pale in comparison to what Jesus will actually do. We're going to talk about that next week. It's come next week. It's awesome. It's going to be great. This is kind of part 2 of this. It's awesome. What do you want from Jesus?